Shorts are like trousers for hot days. In summer, we bare our legs. Grateful skin under warm rays. Painted Easter eggs, in which you can run, swim, and cycle. Mine are purple. Oh, baggies, my baggies. Purple, short, and baggy.
Oh my god.
I'll take a bow.
Wow, thank you, Aaron,
You're welcome.
for that riveting ode to your pair of purple Patagonia shorts.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got the hint, today we're talking about the company Patagonia and focusing a bit on its owner,
Yeah.
or previous owner, I suppose, founder, Yvon Chouinard. And we're going to talk about his life, about the company, and about the recent news, obviously, of him giving away all of his shares, which is all of the shares of the company, to a trust, which is going to be a cool conversation. Do you want to tell us a bit more about your poem?
Well, believe it or not, I've actually been feeling quite writerly and, dare I say, talented. But when I sat down to write this one, I realized I had never written an ode to a company before, and it felt a bit weird. So all I could write about was my only Patagonia branded possession, which is, as I mentioned, a purple pair of the shorts that are called the baggies, right? That's the name of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just didn't have much to say about it.
Incredible.
It felt weird to write about a company.
Yeah.
A poem.
Definitely, it isn't your average company.
Yeah.
As we'll get to. But it feels a bit strange to do a whole episode on any company because it seems a bit counterintuitive to what we talk about a lot. But I guess we can preface the whole conversation by stating our thoughts on capitalism, is what I was thinking.
Okay, what are your thoughts on capitalism?
So my thoughts on capitalism are that I don't think it's always bad. I think it tends to be bad without regulation. So obviously that's not just pure like free market capitalism, but I think with some good people, it can be very beneficial. I think that with regulation, it can be very beneficial, but I think the people need to be different who are in the system and the people aren't different. So I think it's bad.
Yeah.
But if everyone was like Yvon, then it would be incredible because there'd be a bunch of money to go towards climate action, social justice issues, and the like.
Yeah, the mythical benevolent billionaire.
Yeah.
I think that's really what I found so interesting and why we're doing this episode, which is a little bit un-Solacene, is because it's this really fascinating case study of someone working from within the system, basically, to change the system, I suppose you would say. And you learned or were told quite a bit about this case study in your business classes, right?
Yeah.
You always talk about that.
Yeah, because it was always comedic to me because I did a business major or like a business degree and then a major in sustainability. So I'd be flipping between basically the classes with all the capitalists and the classes with all the socialists. And it was quite the contrast. And whenever they'd talk about Patagonia, they'd say, oh, great marketing, great work culture. And a lot of the things are true, but they would often take these things that Yvon intended to be like not anti-consumer, but anti-consumption.
Yeah.
And they would say, oh, this is such a great tool. Like you could really apply this to make more money, basically. But some things that he did was take out a full-page ad on a Black Friday in the New York Times and said, don't buy our product. And everyone in the business circle is like, oh, yes.
Genius.
So sneaky.
Yeah.
But then in reality, he literally just meant, do not buy this unless you need it because that's silly. And then, yeah, there are a bunch of other case studies like, oh, it's really cool. They let their people work like flexible schedules. This is really innovative. It can lead to more productivity. But obviously, when he has these models that he implements, he's not thinking about peak productivity. He's just thinking about well-being and, yeah, keeping the company going.
Mm-hmm. Daycares as well, they have, right?
They have
like
daycares.
Their offices, headquarters.
Yeah, they were some of the first businesses to ever have in-house daycare and, yeah, flexible schedules, work from home, or just like really nice offices that aren't clammy. You don't have to wear a suit.
Clammy.
Yeah.
So before we get into the episode, let's just mention our little website on which people can buy our two zines, one on degrowth, one on education. Those are both really, really great publications. Probably the best things ever written. That's my plug for those. And also you can sign up to our weekly kind of email newsletter called Field Notes on that website. Find us on social media. I don't recommend that. I'll do like a Patagonia. Don't go on those websites.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't posted on them in months.
Yeah. Okay.
But they're there. They exist for communicating, I suppose. And finally, we have book club on Thursday. So if you want to join, send us a message, send us an email, and we will add you to the book club. It's Thursday at 6 p.m. EST. We're reading The Overstory, the first 5 chapters. So you can catch up if you want to join. Just let us know. Exciting times.
Cool. So Yvon Chouinard, Wikipedia calls him first and foremost an American rock climber, which I kind of liked because he just has the small matter of $1 billion company that he also founded, which he founded in 1973, Patagonia, after already kind of having a company selling those things that you use for rock climbing, right?
Pythons?
Yeah, pythons.
Yeah.
I knew that. I knew that the audience wouldn't know.
They wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he started making pythons when he was 19 out of a homemade forge in his parents' chicken coop. Bravo. And he just would make basically a couple a day to sell. And then that would pay for his rock climbing and his camping and his adventures. And that's really all he intended it to be. But then they were such high quality. He really did care about them. He wanted them to be good. That from selling pythons up until when he founded Patagonia, he was one of the top outdoor salesmen in America.
Yeah.
From like the 60s and the 70s. And that was even before he founded the actual clothing brand Patagonia. So before that, it was all tools and gear. So ropes, gloves, those types of things. And I had a few interesting things I learned about his childhood that I thought was very Solacene and just kind of hilarious. So he was born in Maine, but then moved to California when he was 8, where he joined a falconry club. Do you know what a falconry club is?
Something to do with falcons.
Yeah, I just thought it was like, it's like the Masons Club or like some kind of club, and they're not actually Masons.
The Boy Scouts.
Yeah, but they actually have to do with falcons. So it's the people who hunt using like birds of prey. So they'll like train them. It's those people you always see on the street just like holding a falcon.
I've never seen those people.
You've never seen them? No. I've seen several in my lifetime, and I'm like, why are you so...
Sounds like I should join though.
You really like big birds.
Yeah.
So I think, so the guys that are really cool with big birds of prey, and then they release them, and then when the birds are going to swoop down, they're like, that's where the mammal is I need to go hunt.
They use it as like a radar.
Yeah, so he joined that club where he learned how to rappel and climb, basically, at the age of 14. And then when he was 16, he did his first big pilgrimage as a climber, and he rebuilt or built a car just casually. Okay. And I was like, we don't usually praise cars in this episode, but if you're going to drive a car, have built it yourself.
Well, what I do like about car culture and always admire is the DIY-ness of it, like that kind of input that the owner can have. I feel like most of our tools these days don't have that. Even most cars these days moving way away from being able to do anything to them yourselves. So I've always thought that was a cool thing, as much as I don't like stink chariots.
So he built a car at the age of 16 and then drove it to Wyoming, where he just spent the summer learning the ropes, literally. Learning the ropes and learning about pythons and learning how to make things and how to use them. And then, he just went on his merry way for the next 15 years, just spending upwards of 200 days a year outdoors. He has a statement saying that he didn't own a tent until the age of 40. Okay. So you just picture this man out in the woods underneath a tree branch.
With a falcon.
With a falcon, of course. Yeah. And one of my favorite stories that I read about him was that in, what year was it? 1962, he was imprisoned for riding a train, so basically hitchhiking on a train. And the charge that he was arrested under was wandering around aimlessly with no apparent means of support. I was like, that's just so funny that someone literally can't just wander around. It's illegal. You're going to be arrested for it.
The charge was being. He has a lot of interesting stories about his adventures in the wilderness. There was this quote from him. He was like, it's not an adventure until everything goes wrong. I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like that. So he's kind of your cliche,
living on a can of tuna.
Yeah, can of tuna vagabond. Let me put it like that. which is like an inspiring figure, I guess.
Yeah. And it's really cool because like a man like that, you wouldn't even expect to think to sell things.
Yeah, exactly.
But in the world we live in, which will always be the case, you'll need some kind of way of trading.
Hopefully we painted an accurate picture of how he's the opposite of a businessman.
Yeah.
The typical kind of money grubbing, suit wearing, office inhabiting CEO or founder. And I think he often says that. He's like, I'm a businessman, but I never intended to be, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, he's kind of done the ultimate like non-businessman thing recently, but we'll get into that. So about Patagonia, the company, they are obviously a very sustainable and forward-thinking brand. Just some facts about that. Their distribution centers, all their offices, their headquarters, and their retail stores use 100% renewable energy in the USA and 76% globally, which is quite impressive.
Mm-hmm.
They aim to be completely carbon neutral company by 2025. And what I find interesting is that it's in such a traditionally terrible and polluting and unsustainable industry. And they have, I mean, it's not a perfect company, as no companies are, as they acknowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Like they still use a lot of microplastics and polyesters, which obviously we know now aren't great for, say, the oceans. But they try. And it's like if every company, should I say, tried, then that would just be exponentially better.
Yeah, because there'd be innovations to just have a solution to microplastics or like an alternative. But if it's just one or two companies here and there doing the work, it's going to be a lot slower.
What I find also rare about them is that it's a customer-facing brand, whereas so often it's like if someone told me there's this fashion company that is this good for the environment and has been for years, I'd be like, it's probably some brand that you've never heard of that like just does supply chain stuff or just does manufacturing. But this is like everyone knows this brand. That's what's so fascinating about it. That's what's so inspiring, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that it's continued to grow despite their commitment to ethics.
Yeah, or because of it.
Yeah, because I say despite because often when companies, they're super focused on maintaining their integrity, customers might just be like, oh, I'm not going to pay that much for that kind of a product because it's silly. I can get the same thing for cheaper. People have always really valued the quality and the system that is Patagonia.
What's the whole reason that companies do cut corners is to increase the profit margins.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like an example that it's not the only way to do it, which is what I find fascinating. And just some other things. In the 90s, they started using all recycled polyester. They claim to have recovered over 3.5 million pounds of discarded fishing nets, which is cool. And they have like a venture capitalist arm. This is the most interesting thing that I didn't know about the company before doing research, in which, or through which rather, they donate funds to like land conservation and carbon sequestration and like genuine climate friendly activities. Enterprises.
I mean, he was the founder, him and then another guy, of the 1% for the planet, which has become quite common.
Yeah.
Especially in Canada, I realized, because 1% for the planet is basically a commitment that companies make to donate 1% of their pre-tax sales to climate or social justice initiatives. And it's not just, oh, we're just going to throw it at Greenpeace. It's like really, really specifically audited companies or projects that they're going to donate to. And you can go on the website and there's just like literally thousands and thousands of projects that they donate to.
Yeah.
And so they really split it up, which I think is interesting. Instead of just saying, oh, we're going to give 3 million to Greenpeace, they're saying these tiny little local projects could greatly benefit from $2,000, so we'll give it to them. And there's over 1,200 companies that are a part of it now, and it was just founded in 2002, so it's taken off quite a bit. And the Canadian Fair Trade Organization has partnered with 1% for the planet, so for people to be certified fair trade in Canada, they have to donate 1% to the planet, at least of one of their products. So it can be not the whole company, it won't be all of Johnson & Johnson, but it would be like one product might be a 1% for the planet product, which I think is okay. But it'd be great if it was just mandated, and that's what he always says. He's like, if we literally just made this a law, things would be fine.
Yeah.
And it's 1%, like that's so little. I mean, it's a lot of money for like the causes, but in the grand scheme for the companies, it would just take a little bit of budgeting.
Because most founders were saying wouldn't be so generous, basically, and so forward thinking also. Because this was what's really like notable. I was trying to think of the difference between Patagonia and other so-called environmental companies, and there's a lot of them, like clothing companies. It seems like every other one that just launched in the last 5 years or so is saying that sustainability is the priority. But Patagonia has this history of genuinely putting its money where its mouth is, and also just every word that comes out of it is something like I had this quote from him. It said, everything we make pollutes. The most responsible thing we can do is to make each product as well as we know how, so it lasts as long as possible. That's just not the ethos that I think most so-called sustainability-focused brands espouse. And that's, I think, the big difference. Like you said with the ad about don't buy this. Like it's genuine, it's serious. The best thing we can do is make this last as long as it can. And that's the complete opposite of almost all companies. Like think about the technology companies. They deliberately design it to break down, and so is most of fast fashion, right? Like it doesn't last beyond a year or two, which is crazy.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, the idea, this was a quote not from him, but about him, and it said he didn't create a culture of things you want. He tried to create a culture of things that would serve you.
Yeah.
And I think that's another huge difference from the new sustainable fashion brands, because they still feel like I need to make money off of this.
Yeah.
Even if it's well intended. I mean, I find myself thinking this, if I could sell something that I could then put all the money towards climate change. But it's like, you can say that, but the product needs to actually
help.
That's not just be a product.
I always wonder, like when I'm talking about the sustainability brands, I always wonder, what is the point of you? Like, how do you actually help by existing? Because you're just adding clothes, and the world doesn't really need more clothes. But on that note, I had this other quote, also not by Yvon, but by the Canadian environmentalist Naomi Klein, and she said, "What if we shop to live instead of live to shop?" And I was thinking about that. It's like the fact that shopping is recreation is such a cursed thing. It's so gross, and that I think is also at the core of Yvon Chouinard, because it was much more of a craft thing. It was much more of a trying to fill this need, like with the clothes initially. It's like, these are harder. These will last. These are rugged. These are at the time hard to find. So I'm going to bring these to the USA, which is what happened, right? They came from Scotland or wherever it was.
Yeah, they came from the UK.
And with the climbing things as well, it's like, this is filling a gap. People need this. And then once we realized that this is doing damage, then he started pushing the clean climbing, right? So it's like rock climbing that doesn't leave an impact, and we're going to sell or produce tools for that.
Yeah. I mean, his very first, what do you call it, catalog, opened with an essay saying to the people who were going to be reading this catalog, you're horrible. Stop doing what you're doing. Basically, it was just like he's always just incredibly blunt about the impacts of our actions. And he didn't say stop climbing, because obviously he loves climbing, but he said we need to make a change. And obviously we've seen it with climbing. It changed very quickly because he just hammered it home to the climbers, and then it all changed and people were receptive to it. Whereas in like the 70s and 80s and 90s, so like 30 years, but when climate science started coming to the forefront, he would partner with buyers at Walmart or people at Nike or Gap, and he would say, hey, now's your chance. You can make these changes. It'll be better for your business, and it'll be exponentially better for the planet. And then time after time after time, people wouldn't listen to him.
Yeah.
And then it basically got to where we were today. But he was like a one-man army, just like trying to take on Walmart or trying to take on Nike. And he was just, he's been trying and just like literally extending himself so much in a way that I just like, I don't know if I ever could. And I'd really look up to him for that.
Yeah, it is an idealistic level of devotion that's, you rarely see someone with like uncorrupted values with that big a company. Like I looked it up, Patagonia is, like there's different ways of valuing it, but based on the market valuation, I think it was for the last 2 years, it's the 81st biggest clothing brand in the world, which is huge. And
for not trying. It's not like
exactly
he
what
was
I'm
trying
saying.
to do
Like,
that.
they don't try to maximize profits. Like in the press release that they put out for this new news, which we'll get to, in like the FAQ, frequently asked questions, it was like, but does this mean you'll just try to maximize profit so that you have more money for the environment? And they're like, no, of course not. And I
Yeah.
was like, this is just hilarious, because every other company that is a given, that we try to maximize profits at all cost.
Yeah, I also saw a concern posited by a writer in the New York Times about this, and he said, well, since they don't have a stake in the company anymore, they're going to stop caring. And I'm like, they're also going to keep caring because they know that the money will go towards the environment. It's like, they just seem like the most pure family, because I didn't realize he had a family, which almost changed it even more for me, because I was picturing him being just this rugged, vagabond, kind of grandfather-like figure. But he has kids, and he has a wife, and it's like, normally when people, I think, start a company and then they have good intentions, when they have a family, they're like, well, I need to have the best for my kids.
Yeah.
So then I feel like it starts almost pulling away from some values, but him and his kids and his wife, everything that comes out of their mouth is just like, how are you so selfless?
Yeah, not just them, but the other like higher up people, like the CEO. It seems like it's a culture that self-selects for people who care about it, because otherwise, why would you go to work at Patagonia? You can probably get paid more elsewhere if you're like a high-ranking corporate CFO or whatever it is. So yeah, that's interesting. And the other thing that I found that differs them greatly from other companies, even big ones, is that they don't do a ton of collaborations, which I find really, again, kind of noble in the fact that they're so, I mean, there are some, but it's like with this fishing brand. Like it's not what you would expect from what is such a common brand. And there was this quote, it said, this was like a company released to a newspaper or something like that. So it wasn't like an official thing, but it was just a quote from someone at the company. Patagonia is starting to weed out certain corporate clients to focus on customers to prioritize the planet. It's like, that's the internal messaging, basically. It's not just words. And I find that very, very interesting, because you see like a brand like the North Face, you see them doing collaborations with every other, like, not fast fashion, but not sustainable brand. Like they'll do something with Nike, or they'll do something with Supreme or something like that. And Patagonia could, given their, what would you say, like social, given the clout that the brand kind of has, but they don't. And I think that's very respectable.
Yeah, for sure.
I also want to talk about the logo. You like the logo?
Yeah, I love the logo.
Yeah.
Okay. Because of what I learned in university in my business classes, I always had this hesitation about Patagonia, assuming that there was some kind of deep-seated maleficence. Like, yeah, kind of, it's actually not that good. But then the more and more and more, I literally have probably, how many pages here? I have 5 pages of notes from just one day of research. I just was like sucking up so much about this company, and I was like, these guys are my role models.
Yeah.
The logo, the culture, the products, it's just like, and this is amazing.
The different arms of the company, like most people would just think of fleeces or clothes, but when you go on the website, what I've always liked about them is that immediately the focus is not on the clothes. There's like the few things on the top. It's like shop, sport, activism, food and drink, or something like that, because I guess they sell like hiking food and stuff. But the first thing, like, that's dominating the screen if you go to Patagonia's website currently, is called Working Knowledge, which is a series of articles and videos, as they say, grounded in wild places and activism. So it's like, it's journalism effectively. And if you go on their YouTube channel, there's like 40, 50-minute videos that are nature documentaries before you see ads for clothes.
Yeah, so they have so many cool things. They have a thing called like Live Action Patagonia, and you can literally go on and it will give you super well-suited volunteer opportunities for you. And it says, what I found really cool, because we're so economically minded, it says, if you do this volunteer opportunity, if you volunteer 6 hours a week for 2 months doing graphic design for this company or this project, you'll save them $6,000, which they can then put towards the actual, like, the people they're trying to help and things like that. And they just have so many comprehensive and user-friendly projects in a way that almost no other activism organization does, because they don't have the funds. But Patagonia has the funds, so they're able to put out these just super high-quality documentaries and make them, you're trying to buy a sweater, but then you're faced with volunteer opportunities, educational materials. It's just so great. I love them. Dream job, maybe.
It sounds like we're sponsored by them.
Yeah.
I wish. Patagonia x Solacene. Sometime soon.
Maybe.
That idea of craft over products that the founder always espouses, I think that's so, and what I was talking about, we should shop to live, not live to shop. And the fact that people work 5 days and then, oh, maybe on Saturday I'll get to go to the mall. With no intention of really buying anything specific. It's the buying. It's the retail therapy that we live for, instead of buying tools that we need to then do other things, or that would help us do other things. And I was thinking about that idea of the craftsman versus the businessman, in contrast perhaps with how the brand has grown, I would say exponentially over the last decade or so, because it seems to my eyes that for many years it was an outdoorsy brand, and maybe like dads wore it when they went hiking and things like this. But then in the last decade, you see it's almost a meme, I think, that in like tech circles and finance circles, people wear Patagonia a lot. If you walk on, I would say, most college campuses that I've been on anyway, it's like Patagonia anyway, everywhere, just to go to class and things like that. So it's that idea that these things were perhaps made as craft, not product, but they're being received as products, not craft. And I thought we could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a hard one, because I definitely think that also fed into my perception of this company, of just the fact that everyone owned a Patagonia sweater, specifically the one type, the type, the buttons,
the fleece.
pocket, the fleece.
Yours.
It was a gift. I didn't buy it. I mean, I just can imagine how heartbreaking that would be as Yvon. I think that kind of is part of what pushed him to the edge of just like giving away the company. Because imagine you work your whole life to make these super high quality products that will help people do things that you love and things that they love. And then all of a sudden, it was definitely in the last 10 years, because he said during the financial crisis in 2008, profits increased by 2 to 3 times. So it's just like there was this weird place that the company took in the economy and in society.
Yeah, in culture.
In culture, yeah. And it just was like, during a financial crisis, for some reason, this was a company that people turned to. They maybe said, well, I can only buy one thing, so I'm going to buy the high quality thing. And then, again, they just kept like exponentially growing from 2008 until today. And it's just, it went from, like 20 million a year to 100 million. And just how, I don't know, upsetting it would be, because you're trying to make the highest quality products, then all of a sudden you're still making these high quality products, but perhaps they're not being valued.
Yeah.
Because it's like people stopped looking at money the way that we did a few years ago, because it's like, oh, a $200 sweater now. Everyone probably owns a $200 item. Whereas a few years ago, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm older, but I feel like people didn't. They're still a bit thrifty and still a bit, like, not everyone could afford that.
Well, I think
or
people
like,
spend a lot of money on clothes, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm trying to.
The internet has made things a lot more visual. Like, people are a lot superficial now. But I also think that, I don't want to sound too negative on it. It was just a small note that I had. It's this idea that we're in like a post-craft world. So we're kind of like the Wall-E people, meaning that we're just like rolling around on our phones, drinking smoothies. And it's like, what do they need? Why would they need rugged clothes? They don't need it. So it's like the only option is for it to be like a stylistic choice, basically. Like, it's the umbrella theory that I had the other day. Remember? I said umbrellas look cool because it means that people need to go somewhere. Like, it's a functional item in a world where almost nothing is purely functional anymore. And I think like you see it in fashion a lot, that things that originally were just functional, or mostly functional anyway, become get used or co-opted, I suppose, as just like status symbols or a kind of cosplay. Like, you see it with those fishing hats. What are those called? That where we used to live in Nova Scotia, everyone who was genuinely like hunting and fishing would wear these hats because that was the culture. But now it's like, I think through TikTok, they became popular just for like city slickers. You know the hats.
Yeah, Bass Pro Shop.
Yeah, the Bass Pro Shop hats. It's kind of like that, right?
Yeah, I think so. And the thing with Patagonia is, like, anyone who chooses to buy it as a status symbol, everyone recognizes it, and they know that they don't go on sale. They know that they don't make them cheap, that they're not defective or like sold at an outlet. They're like, for sure that is a high quality garment.
And also that it shows a kind of this person cares
Yeah.
about the environment kind of thing. And there was this quote that was interesting from one of the people who worked at Patagonia talking about a new type of brand loyalty. And that was the word they used. That was the phrase. So it's like, it's not a completely different vocabulary from a Nike, which is what I find really interesting, but they go about it in a different way. And I'm not sure it's an awful thing. Like, I was just thinking about that, what the logo means. Because this is still like a huge corporation that people flock to, and it still has this this connotation of luxury and clothing and branding, and there are probably some loyalists who are quite into the consumerism, so that's still like a bad thing. But I think that the values they espouse is a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. I'll read another quote because I feel like people speaking about this company are always very articulate. So someone said, "I don't think they're an anti-company. I think they're just a company that understands its cause and understands how to integrate that cause into its business model, and it does that extremely well." And I think that puts it really well. It's just like, yeah, they're a business. Don't like act like they aren't, but they just keep their, what do you say? They wear their morals on their sleeve, basically. Yeah. And yeah, they'll shout at you even if you're buying the product, like, "Do you need it? Are you sure?" But we need to change as a people, as a society, because like these companies can exist and provide high quality things, but if we're gonna buy them as status symbols, it's something wrong with us, not really with them.
It'd be nice if people camped more, though. Yeah, because then you could have your cake and eat it too. Mm-hmm. Speaking of cake.
Oh, the organism of the week is the most commonly seen mammal in Patagonia, which is the southmost region of South America. Yeah. And it is
the Patagonian skunk. Ta-da!
So the Patagonian skunk, it looks like a skunk.
That's the most cartoonish drawing you've done for...
It's because they're really hard to draw realistically.
The way you've drawn the eyes makes it look like it's the character in a new Disney movie that's the zany one. Like it always has its tongue out.
Yeah.
The companion of the main character.
So it just looks like a skunk. But I really liked the skunk, the Patagonian skunk, because it's really sleek looking. And sometimes they're like light brown instead of black. And I just thought they were really fun. And yeah, they're the most commonly seen mammal in Patagonia. And there's nothing really non-skunky about them. They spray if they're scared and to like mark territory. And they're 60 to 75 centimeters long, 1 to 4 kilograms. Omnivores.
Ever been sprayed by a skunk?
I have not been sprayed by a skunk, but I've had pets. I
saw one last year. I remember it was crossing the road. It was very low.
Yeah. I like skunks a lot. I wish they weren't so smelly, but they're kind of cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember my sister went through a big skunk phase. She was like drawing skunks and everything. I'm not sure what that meant. Nice organism.
Yeah, so thanks, Organism of the Week, for coming on and sponsoring us. Hopefully, if anyone's in Patagonia, they don't get sprayed by you, or they'll just say hello to you.
Do you like the Patagonia products? Do you like their clothes?
As you alluded to, I only own one sweater, which was a gift.
No, there's two.
There's two?
2 jumpers.
I have another jumper. I have 2 Patagonia jumpers, neither of which were bought from me.
Okay.
From the company. But I own them, and they're very, very warm. I'm a very cold individual, and so I do really like them. They're very thick, high quality. Obviously, you can get them repaired if anything happens to them. But one of them is probably 20 years old. Like, I think it was secondhand in the first place. So it just looks like new. So it's just a testament to the quality of their products, and I really like them. I don't think I've ever even browsed their websites, but I've gone in their stores, which I always enjoy because their stores are always just really
I wanted to talk about that a little bit. The retail experience of Patagonia. It's akin to the Apple Store, I think, in terms of it's distinct and it's just nice to be in. And also, obviously, you feel a little bit poor when you're walking around there, akin to an Apple Store. But I couldn't find much online. I thought I'd be able to find essays about the Patagonia shopping experience and how they make their store so distinct in the way that you would about an Apple Store. But
there wasn't much?
No, I couldn't find much. But it is, it's just an enjoyable place to be. I don't know. There's an easygoing, something about that wood.
Yeah, why is it? Because it's like a franchise almost. When you go in, they always have the wood. At least every store I've been in Canada has had, the wooden stairs, the 2 floors, the change rooms that look like a cabin. And I think what stands out is the difference, because the people who work there aren't pushy salesmen like every other store you go in. Oh, can I take that for you? I'll put it in the change room and try it on, and we'll just do. It's like, please stop. I just want to look. Because I was even in a thrift store yesterday, and someone was like, "Oh, let me take that for you. Do you want to?" And I was like, "No, just let me look around. That's why I'm here. I don't want to buy anything." But I feel like the Patagonia people appreciate that. They're like, maybe these people are just here to look, and probably 9 times out of 10 they are just like looking at the things,
right?
And they don't push it on you. And if you do have any actual questions, because I've been with my sister, bought a sweater there once, and I remember she was like, it was a big deal. It was like obviously a big purchase, and she was like asking questions, and the people were really knowledgeable about the makeup of the material, the durability, and the purpose of everything. I just think it's really great. It's like the Genius Bar, but for fleeces.
Yeah, and they do repairs there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I didn't know is that they accept non-Patagonia like fleeces.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, you can. We didn't talk about the circularity at all, but I mean, you can give those back to the company. I don't think they would just repair like a North Face jumper for you and give it back smiling, but
yeah,
but you can
donate them.
Yeah, they accept the materials, which is what is nice. And we didn't talk about that, like Restitch Fixed Up website that they have. Right? Yeah, the Wornwear.
Yeah, Wornwear is a cool website because it just looks like a completely different brand. Like, it's not like there's some kind of consistency across the two. It's just like there's the Wornwear brand and there's the Patagonia brand. But basically on the Wornwear website, you can buy just secondhand Patagonia. So they'll take it in if it's not damaged and they'll resell it. And it's a great accessible tool for hiking gear and stuff, which I think is really incredible, because often when you're just getting into a hobby, it's like, well, I'm going to have to go buy a bunch of new stuff and I might not even like it. I might not buy the right stuff. So I think it's really cool that they offer that on there. But it's almost always sold out because it's such a great resource. But they also, take in sweaters and they'll like patch them up. I mean, I feel like everyone knows the design of that jumper because it's designed to be fixable. That's why there's different colors and things on it. And it's the same with a lot of their other garments. They're like segmented in ways that they can be deconstructed and repaired. So it's like, if the knees are obviously going to wear out faster than the rest of the pants, they're double lined or they're a different color segment so that they can replace it. And I just think that's an incredible, incredible business model, because, I mean, if you're looking at it from a business perspective, it's just like you basically have to do no work. You just receive people's free products and you resell them, make a bit more money. But from a sustainability perspective, it's just perfect, not perfect. It's great circularity, which is what the economy needs to shift towards, because I don't think we'll be able to shift to a completely like agrarian society overnight. Yeah. But shifting towards a circular, sustainable economy basically could happen overnight. If there was just some people putting their heads together at every brand and saying, how can we make these products durable? How can we repair them? And at the end of life, how can we stop the materials
responsibility for it?
Yeah, from going into landfills. So that's the thing with Patagonia. You probably could send in just like a shrapnel of a sweater and they'd be like, okay, we'll recycle it for you. I mean, I know that you can do that. So it's just like they take responsibility for the fact that they have put these materials out of like their raw form and into something that can't just decompose, and they take responsibility.
Yeah. So
it's incredible.
About the recent news, I'll try and word it and then you can correct me with your business your business study brain, because it's a little bit confusing. It's easy to just say he gave the company away to the planet, and like on the press release it said like the Earth is our only shareholder now, and I was like, that's cool, but how is that legally? Like, how does that actually work? So basically, I think what happened is, as of September, so like very recent, probably the most contemporary thing we've ever done on Solacene.
Yeah, it's true.
Current events, look at us. He gave the company away to something called Patagonia Purpose Trust, and they like make the decisions. And the majority of that stock, 98% of it, I think, goes to what's called the Hold Fast Collective, which is a climate-focused nonprofit, which I'm pretty sure he also owns or founded or something like that.
That's what it seems like, yeah.
And the way the money is paid out to them, so like every cent that doesn't go back into the company is paid out through dividends, like the yearly release thing, to this collective, which, as I say, is a nonprofit. So in a way, Patagonia is kind of indirectly acting as a nonprofit, but not really.
Yeah, so basically 2 or 3 years ago, when Yvon was listed as a billionaire on the Forbes list of billionaires.
Ooh, the list.
He was very unhappy with that. And he was like, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to keep, like, this is still too much of a business for me, basically. He's 83. He's just been doing this since he was like a teenager. So he's just like, he was like, I'm done. And then it was funny because people who, like, his closest advisors were like, there was a point where he was threatening to just call a billionaire on the list and give it away. Because he was like, you need to make it, like, you need to find a way for us to, like, if I die tomorrow, for this to go on and this to be sustainable. Because he knew if he just, like, died, someone would take the company because his kids didn't want it because they also are very anti-business.
Yeah.
And he's like, someone's going to take it and they're going to turn it into something evil. So he was trying to basically say, we need to do something about it. And there are a bunch of options. Turn Patagonia into a not-for-profit. Turn, just donate all the profits to like the 1% for the earth. Go public. But a lot of those have associated tax benefits in the United States.
Yeah.
So the most recent billionaire besides Yvon to like give away a bunch of their money was a conservative who gave it away to the Conservative Party somehow. But then he got like hundreds of millions of dollars, if not $1 billion in like tax refunds.
Yeah.
So it's just like, he didn't want that to happen because he just didn't want, he wanted to like make a statement basically.
I had this quote on, or this phrase rather, on like the general way in which Patagonia tried to make its decisions from the beginning, which is to choose larger risk tolerances in the service of environmental goals. So saying that most companies, especially ones that big, like for instance going public, the way that they would make decisions, the way they would go forward, and the way they'll be ran would be to minimize risks because they don't care about environmental goals. So this is like a way of wording it, is that we are okay with the risk of making less profit, basically. Whereas if we went public, it's like we'd be too beholden to the shareholders for short-term profits and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so obviously doing this is super risky, and there's a chance that the profits might decline a little bit just because now there's a board of people running it. It's not just one person who can just kind of make black and white decisions. But I feel like Yvon can rest easy just like knowing that it's now in the hands of a carefully selected group, some of which are like family and friends, who can make these decisions. And he said at least the next 50 years is going to be in good hands.
It reminds me a little bit of when, let's say, some environmentally inclined party, like in government-wise, gets in and they can pass whatever bill and build something, but people are like, but when the next party comes in, when the next government happens, when it changes, it's all going to get written over. So this was a way of trying to codify Patagonia and saying, even after my term is over, we're going to keep doing this because it's written now. Like it's unchangeable, kind of.
Yeah, he also, like, there was so many things about him saying he just wants to show people that it's possible.
Yeah.
And I mean, as someone who basically wants to do this, like, that's, there was a point, I mean, this is basically the birth story of Solacene in our life's work, is we were just like, what's the most effective way to make change? And it was like, having a traditional company, but using it
but being
for
good people
is like I think the most effective way, because with going into politics, 16-year-old us for like politics wouldn't be, there's so much bureaucracy, there's so many compromises you'd have to make. But if you run your own enterprise, then it's like you're just in charge of everything. So you can just say, we're going to take this risk, or we're not going to grow this year, we're going to keep it the exact same profits, we're not going to strive for growth, but it's going to be for the betterment of the world. And it's like, we don't even know what product or what thing we want to do yet, but it's just like, I think that is the best model for people who are looking to it, and to see it finally an example of like a kind of full circle success story. I think this is really inspiring to people like us and anyone, because I don't think we're the only ones with this idea. I think there's a lot of people, and I just think it's really noble of him to say, to basically sacrifice the rest of his life and his kids' like fortunes basically, and say, we are laying this down for the good of the planet and you can do the same. Because he's obviously a very happy man.
In the letter that he wrote about this, I don't remember the exact wording, but it was something like, I'm dead serious about saving this planet. That's how it ended. And I was like, I think I got goosebumps reading that. Speaking of the Solacene, I just had a couple like Solacene relevant notes that I think we can close the episode on, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So one is that in the Solacene, there won't be people who always look to criticize people or companies for being hypocritical. I always think that's annoying. It's like, oh, but Patagonia, don't you realize they partnered with this one company one time that uses bad labor or something like that, or uses bad materials? Because there is always an admission from people earnestly trying that it's not perfect. So it's not hypocrisy, it's just mistakes, and everyone makes mistakes. And I don't think we should not try because we'll never be perfect. I've always found that quite annoying when people are like, oh, but Greta uses water bottles. It's like, what is that? She's still trying. Like,
yeah.
That annoys me. I understand people don't like being preached at, but I think we shouldn't be so kind of defensive about things like that. And we shouldn't take other people trying as an attack on our own lives. Also, I think there'll be more viable ways of organizing ourselves like Patagonia does in groups, because I think the way that people organize themselves is kind of, that's how you, like, that question is kind of how the world is made. So like if people organize themselves primarily in ways that can increase profits, then the world becomes like what it is now, which is not a nice thing. And if people organize themselves in ways that primarily are helping or making or creating things that people genuinely need with sustainability in mind, then it becomes a nicer thing. So it's like more of these organizations that kind of evade our very narrow labels of company, charity, political party. Because if you look at Patagonia, it's like they're a company, but also they do a weird amount of political activism and donating. So it's like, what exactly? They're not just one thing.
Yeah, when I was trying to define what the Solacene project basically is, I was looking through a lot of definitions of what's an enterprise, what's a company, what's a not-for-profit. And it's like the definition of a company isn't what we think of it as like a money-grabbing group of angry people trying to get a bunch of money to buy houses. It's just a company. Like there's theater companies, which are just like a group of people doing something. And I want to like take back the word company for like for something good. And I feel that's what Patagonia did and what I hope to contribute to someday. It's just like, I like the idea of a company. It's just like a band of vagabonds doing something.
Robin Hoods.
Yeah.
Also in the Solacene, there'll be more, hopefully, genuine desire and need for outdoor tools because people will be camping more. So it's like, we actually do need these sticks that we use to climb rocks because that's what we do.
Yeah.
Climb rocks, so we need sticks for it. And also more of the circular corporations, because we already talked about it, but I just think it's a very, very nice Solacene economic concept. And more of companies telling people to buy less. I think that's also kind of cool.
I agree. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you on next week's episode.
Bye.